Gambino placed his hand upon his friend's shoulders. Get some rest. I can't have you dying of exhaustion. If there was any hint of a joke, Edmund didn't show any registration within his facial features. He nodded before regarding up to the blond man, silently asking if he would be all right while he rested. As if sensing his question, Gambino nodded and gave him a tiny push. With that, Edmund let his body creak upward, and he slunk towards the door, regarding over his shoulder once more before disappearing out the once locked door. Gambino retreated to the same door after he was sure that Edmund was gone, and locked again, with another click, then turned his sights upon the creature under the covers, and his eyes narrowed into dangerous slits, moving quickly towards her bed. A memory jogged into his mind, a sleeping princess awaiting a gallant prince. This creature wasn't beautiful, and he would be damned to seducing a woman in her sleep. But the irony of the scene was still the same, his right hand reaching out, almost wanting to strangle her, or shake her feeble body awake, demand to know what Edmund said was true. Did she say Apollos? Was she the one? Could he go back to the comfortable life he had again? Could he forget this nightmare and wake up to see all his old friends again? He stopped, grasped away from her shoulder. Friends. Quote, flashback. The still screams and a bloody hand reaching out from a pile of ravenous monsters, calling, pleading, and begging for help. Oh God! Johnny! Gambino! No! Holy Mother! No! No! Holy Mother! End flashback quote. The small gas and brilliant silver eyes brought him back to the present. Hands around the slender shoulders, he could feel the panting and quickening of her breath under his palms, and the bones of her shoulders poking out. She was staring at him, and then both of their eyes created a connection then. Hurt and remorse, horror, feel, and much more within those pools of watercolor and skyline hues. Karma at that moment for these two people connected, and a line of total understanding was thrown down on their highway of life. Even with the shaking of the two bodies, and she wanted to recoil away from the tower of the man in front of her, he held her and whispered out to her, "You saw Apollos, didn't you? Tell me." Grunting. Her eyes narrowed slightly in question, and he let her take the time she needed to answer, staring down at her still. She remembered the fire, his smile, then blood upon her lips, and tears, many tears in a man made of gold, giving her a star upon her chest. Her fingers laced down the rough blanket as the hard surface that was cradled in the valley of her bosom, crystal light, shaped like a star. She gently reached up and took Gambino's hands off of one of her shoulders, feeling him stiffen when she laid it to rest upon the hard surface that nestled there. He, flashback quote, laughed with eyes the color of jade, and took her hand, regarding her with mirth and a coy look within those shaded depths. He replied in a gruff voice, I, end quote, would be safeguard, be the light at the end of the tunnel. He promised. Her eyes swirled again, staring upward to the ceiling, past Gambino as if she was lost in a dream world, pretending to be Alice in the looking-glass, and chased the ivy rabbit down to those depths of their mind. But Gambino wouldn't allow her to escape. Recoiling his hand from his chest and clasping it back onto his shoulders, he shook her violently. Her head snapped back to the pillow, making her whine softly. Will you be the safeguard? Can we mold you? Can we change you? Can you promise to help us? He was growling out his questions. He wanted the answers. He needed to know. He needed to know if everything would be all right and things would go back to the way they were. Change was bad. Change was everything he didn't need. He could feel the bones grind against his palms, when he pressed her into the bed. Yes, for him. Once she had said it, he closed his eyes and forced the emotions back down. It didn't matter with anything else she said. Screw her name, screw who she was. She was now a tool to him, and he would be a key to his salvation. She had said the magical word. Yes. ignoring everything else and ignoring anything around him, creating a web of underlining harmony into the shadows of his mind. He felt free, he felt safe. He built his own delusions, again, of heaven. He would carve out her breast and put the sky and sun there, make her the virgin that birthed the new coming into a trinity of judgment. He shook his head. One thing at a time, Johnny. One thing at a time. Gambino withdrew his hands from her upper frame, straightening and held out his hand, regarding her with hooded eyes, with his usual sly smile. Then let us begin, Miss. She looked at him with an unreadable expression before mumbling tones came out, and her voice like a distant shore and the crying gulls in the eve. My name has no more meaning any more. When the time is right, you'll know what to call me. Regards his hand. He knew what to always call me. He blinked at her, was about to open his mouth to unleash another question, but she was already up and holding onto his hand. Even now he realized that she was unashamed of the naked form and the long locks fluttering about her face. The gem that seemed to be welded into the valley of her breast glistened under the faint limelight. The attention made Gambino realize he couldn't take her out into the halls as she was. Why hadn't anyone put clothes on her? Well, maybe it was for observation that Josie had to do later. He would have to have a talk with her. Releasing her hand and undoing his jacket, he pressed it against her shoulders. The material engulfed her small form, and it made it look seamless as she was wearing a knee-length robe. And he took into his note, at least into his mind, that she may have been 5'4" or 5'5". How could something so small be a savior? Why couldn't it be a strong man with guns blazing and barrels firing into the sunset? Guess not. She should have been freezing from the icy floor. She should have been blushing from her exposed form. She should have been many different things, giggling, stumbling over her words because of presence. She wasn't a tool. Or maybe she was. It was so surreal sometimes here. He kept telling himself that, but she was doing nothing save looking to the door, without blinking or moving for that matter. Maybe this was a good thing. He regarded with a note at least. It would make her transformation easier. Erase what emotion she has. Leading the way, he undid the lock to the door, and the hinges creaked open in protest. She wobbled out, not really trusting her legs, but forced herself nonetheless. Even when he started to reach out, he could see that she was wheeling herself forward, not trusting anything else about her. But these were just assumptions right now. He disappeared after her, and the door squealed closed behind them with a soft thud. The only evidence of someone ever being in the room was the rumpled alarming blanket now discarded on the cold tile floor. Lem knew he was a pimp the day he turned 2 years of age, when all the girls at the playground would gather around him and give him cupcakes. This was the day he knew he was special. This is what he grew up with. He would woo the other sex into nothing, leaving them clawing and gagging for more love than he could ever breathe into being. He considered himself a god on that level. He saw himself as the lusting thing that would dominate the female race into moaning, groveling puddles of fucking mush. In this dark time when things were bare and the mortals were leveled with nothing but hope on a string, he would be a messed up light of love in some spectrums. Even now, with 2 unnamed women that lay sleeping in his cabin within the dwellings of this place, he lay staring at the ceiling. He had been the first to find Laura that night, it seemed a long time ago. The door lock smashed, and the smell of something rotten growing that windy day. He destroyed the kitchen window to get inside her house. Upon finding a partially devoured toe, Lem felt his blood run cold, and when entering into the master bedroom, where he had spent many of nights trying to get into the scent of the young lady's pants, he found the newly remodeled paint job. He never lost his lunch so fast in his life. She was torn apart, but when Gambino said parts of her were missing, he knew that hell on Gaia had happened. Many did the following events that quickly. It still left his mind boggled. He thought he loved Natasha. She was different than the other girls around him. When no others would have him, she took him in and turned the tables on him. Then she was thrust into the darkness that day when G-Corp was torn apart. How could something... Even now, how come he still didn't feel anything? Her eyes pleading for him to hold on to her, but she screamed, and then she was gone. Lem could still remember the tips of her nails breaking off as she crawled at the vent that they tried to crawl through, holding onto one of her arms, the clack of each plastic nail breaking off her fingernails, and of each device digging into the foil of the ventilation. Screwed up scratches on the chalkboard. Flashback quote, "Baby, please don't let go. Please, please." Her voice bleeding, bright eyes glassy-eyed, and she squinted when feeling their claws tear open her stomach. "Baby, please." He thought he could hold on, but he valued his life more. He let, flashback unquote, go of the thought before ghosts of the past would haunt him forever. He was immortal, and he didn't need to hold on to one woman to prove who he was. He lived and she died. That was all that matters. Right? Shaking the female next to him, his smirk planted onto his handsome features. How about another tumble, sweet pea? End of chapter.